Hi, y'all. My name's Todd, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Todd.
And my story really started when I was about 8 years old. My dad would come home almost every night, and there'd be it would be late. I would be standing in the window at the corner of 44th and Charleston, waiting for the Studebaker to go by, go in the alley, and then you sons of bitches, and running from room to room, and getting us kids up. And that was pretty par for the course. And I thought, I'm that's bullshit. I'll never do that. Well, shortly after that, I started stealing wine from the liquor cabinet. Didn't like whiskey. And I got caught for that. I had an old stand-up tube radio in my bedroom. And I had a jar, and I would pour the wine in there, and then I would drink from it. And this is, 9, 10, 11, 10 probably. And I got caught. And so I didn't hide it there anymore. And as things went on, it was pretty cool. When I got into Madison junior high school, it was pretty cool to go out and run around, stay out. My dad would go fishing, so he would be gone for the weekend. And my mom never questioned. She was a very passive person. The time I got home, we would steal cars, and just my dad had a new car agency and a used car lot, and so we'd take cars off that and go around and just do normal kid stuff, I guess. But it wasn't normal. My life was never, ever, ever normal. And I always thought that there was a kid by the name of John Benedetti. He was not an alcoholic, but his parents took him on camping trips, and he went fly fishing. And I thought, what a fucking geek. It's just, but I admired it as well. Another good friend of mine who just recently passed away, I knew him since the 6th grade, and that would have been, Christ, I don't know, 10. That would have been 60 years. And he had a normal family, but he also drank with us, but not too often, but often enough that he became part of the cool guys, right? And I was I am dyslexic as hell, and never did very well in school. And so I overcompensated by doing really well and running around and being crazy. And that went on through high school. And there weren't any big incidents. I'd get the shit kicked out of me every once in a while because I'd mouth off, and guys would beat me up. But that was kind of a normal life. I mean, it didn't, but always when I'd been drinking, always when I was lit. So when I graduated from high school, well, just before we graduated, there were 6 of us that planned to go to Europe. And this was 1958. And they all kind of backed out. I went to work at Husky for 2.5 years and saved every dime I made. This was the first time I ever had a goal other than getting high or getting drunk. And I saved enough money, bought and sold cars in high school, and saved enough money to go to Europe with Bugs, my best friend, who's still around. He's not an alcoholic. And he came up to me in March of our senior year and said, "Collins, I can't go on the trip." And I said, what are you talking about? We've been planning this for years. It's the only thing that saved me were Bugs and other guys that were planning on doing this trip. And he said, "Well, Marge is going to have a baby in October, and I have to go to work during the summertime to make sure we have enough money to get married." So for whatever reason, I thought I wanted to buy a new Thunderbird. And one of the better things that my dad ever did to me, he says, "Todd, you're either going to take the trip, you're going to invest it in something, or you're going to save it. You're not buying a car." Well, I'll show you. So I found this group that was headed up by Doris Freepons, a history teacher from South High School, and we went to Europe for 2.5 months. Went over in a ship and came back on a ship. I can tell you every day to this day what we did almost. I mean, not every day, but it changed my life forever. And you could drink in your, as soon as we got on board ship, they would serve you alcohol. I was 17 and I knew all about that. But whatever I got out of that, it wasn't a revelation of not drinking, certainly. But came back, and then I went to school at Whitworth College in Spokane first year, and I did very well. And the reason I did very well is because I'd get drunk. And Whitworth, if you don't know, at the time and still is a very strict Presbyterian school. But I wanted to get away from my home. And so after the first semester, they allowed me to come back in if I would come back on disciplinary probation, which means that after the last class, be it 4 or 5 o'clock, you sat your ass down in your dorm room and didn't leave. Well, fortunately, there were two teachers that helped. The first one is Dr. Simpson, and he was an English teacher, and he had a withered leg. He went on to be president of the university, or it ended up being a university. And I went in and was complaining about the English teacher I had the first semester. Now I'm on disciplinary probation. And he said, "Well, I have a class that meets 2 days a week for 3 hours each day, each time. And you can come to that." And, well, right, he was head of that. I balked. He said, "That's fine." He folds up everything and gets on his crutch and gets out. I said, wait. He said, "Look, you asked to come in here to do something. I offered you an opportunity, and you said no." So he said, that's fine. We'll just leave it the way it is." Well, of course, I took his class. The other teacher was Miss Frick, and she taught zoology, and she was gorgeous. At least I thought so. So I fell in love with her. Nothing ever happened, but I could take, because I was on restriction and had to stay on campus, I could go to lab 3 nights a week and work with Miss Frick. It was her first year teaching. And that was, I think, probably the last period of time that I could remember that I did not drink because I was on disciplinary probation. I mean, we found out ways to do it, but at least I wasn't puking out my 3rd-story window of the residence that we stayed in. So after that, they were too strict, so I went to Washington State University. And during the second semester there, it was obvious that I was drinking too much, and I'd have to come. if I came back, well, to get to the next semester, it was disciplinary probation. And so halfway through that, about 4 or 5 days beyond where my parents could get a refund of some of the money that they spent educating me, they didn't get 5 cents back because of the time that I picked to leave. I just piled everything in my car and left. Went in the Army and didn't drink the first, I don't know, it's 4 or 5 weeks. And then they let you go to the beer PX for one night. I came back and got in a fight with somebody walking back, and I could have killed him. I had him in a stranglehold, and my temper was just off the map. And of course, we were all drunk. And I remember he said to me, "I can't breathe," and that didn't stop me. But they all pulled me off of him. My point in telling a bit of this is to explain my personality. I had no restriction on getting angry. It was either full on or full off. That went on, and got out of the Army. I signed up. A buddy of mine and I were going to sign up. Dave Bible. I don't know if he's around anymore. He's not in the program either. He signed up for 3 years, and at the last minute, I signed up for 6 months, and then I think it's 7.5 years reserve duty. So he went into the Army, was assigned someplace, and I didn't. I went to Georgia, went to a communication school there. And, the drinking didn't stop, although it slowed down because you had to show up and do stuff. Came back, applied at Whitworth again, and they wished me well in my life, but not there. And so my dad was a Studebaker dealer, and I was obviously not doing anything. And he said, "I'll show you a profession. You come and sell cars for me, and we can approach going back to school in a couple of years." Well, I've been in the car business ever since. And my dad and I bought a small Chevrolet dealership in Monroe, Washington, and went up there. And I think it was 3 years after we bought it, he died. My dad died. So I got it. And I had, fortunately, really, really good people around me. We had an employment of, I think it was 26 or 28 people, and a couple of really good salesmen. One guy I went all through high school with, another guy just from the Monroe area, and it just blossomed. It exploded. Ended up building a new building, buildings, a shop, body shop, showroom. We did really, really well, and the people that I was working with were very, very good. And so then obviously I couldn't make any mistakes. Just so I started drinking more at noon, and on and on and on, to the point where there's a way at the time you would get a certificate of ownership on new products, like campers, for instance. This is what I used. And you could take the certificate of ownership and turn it into the bank, and they would floor or issue money on that certificate of ownership. So I'd buy 8 or 10 campers at a time, and then turn and I didn't pay for the camper to the company that built the campers. Now, this is sober. And that's what I started to do when I was drunk, and I did sober, as what continued as sober, because I had stretched the cash flow to such a point that if I let it all cascade in, I'd go broke. Well, God, anything, even though you're sober, you still, I don't mean you, I still thought basically my shit didn't stink. Um, well, everything caved. And what's interesting to me, and I was relieved at that time. I'd been sober a year, not a year, I'd been sober several months. And the same day that I got the call from the bank, um, we had an alcohol recovery center at the Monroe Hospital. And so one of the guys I knew from the car business from years ago, in fact, one of the last guys I got drunk with, John O, was walking around the front of the building. And I, what are you doing here? He said, well, I went, sobering up. And that, for whatever reason, the fact that Johnny was there made it easier to some degree. I had 2 kids by this time, a boy and a girl. And one thing, there was no financing. The dealer in Olympia, whom I knew, Ed McCarroll, who I knew very well, bought all my inventory, paid invoice for everything because he was a good friend. And so, and then during this kind of 3-4 day period where everything was just caving, Grace Kerwin, the mayor of Monroe, came to see me and said, Todd, the city the city buildings of Monroe were built, I think, in 1906. And so she said, and she came to see me with 3 of the city council members, 3 or 4. And she said, Todd, I was wondering if you'd be interested in selling your building and property. And I thought, well, I don't know. Grace, what do you think? Of course I would. I mean, it was a gift. And as it turned out, it went through, it was voted at the city council. Supposedly, Chevrolet Motor Division had a dealer that would pay me out, buy me out, pay everything off and everything. That was bullshit. And I knew that. And so it went through the city council, passed, and these are things that happen when you sober up, passed the purchase of the property 4-3 with 1 abstaining in favor of purchasing the property. It got me dead even. I paid my mom off for her part because she obviously inherited some of it from my father. It covered my overdraft. It did this, it did that. And so I went, you can go, in the car business, there's a way of, they call it wholesaling, where a guy will go out and buy used cars and sell them to used car lots. And then there's a margin in between. And I did that for, I don't know, 6 or 7 months. And my wife and I at that time were having a lot of problems. And I went home one night and she had dinner fixed. And Greg and Christy were sitting there waiting for me to come home. Christy, my daughter, she was just 6 years old at that time, but we had a long stairway going up to the 2nd floor. And she would stand on the stairs and then throw herself at me when I'd walk through the front door. And I'd have to catch her or she'd go on her toes. And she's alive today, and she's absolutely, I'm blessed. So anyway, dinner was prepared, and I walked Judy to the door, and she said, "You'll tell the kids, won't you?" And I said, "Yes." And so after dinner, I could start bawling now. After dinner, and I'd been sober maybe a year. After dinner, we sat down, and I told the kids, And my son looked at me and he said, "Why did you even have us?" And I guess that was probably my bottom. The night, and I should back up a little bit, the night that I quit drinking, I was still working at the dealership. I drove home at 10 o'clock at night from lunch, pulled into the driveway. Um, my son's bedroom was over the garage, and he waved at me in his bedroom window. And he was supposed to go to school the next day, and did. Um, and I thought, fuck, this is an instant replay of my life. It's what I did. It's what I'm passing on. It gives me chills to this second. It has to stop. And so I knew Jerry up in Sultan was part of AA. He is the only person I knew in AA. And I had Judy at the time call him, my wife. And he came down and sat with me that night and the next 3 days. And at the end of the third day, he said, I don't sponsor people. Here's the big book. Read it. It's got all your answers. And he left. And I don't think I saw him 10 times after that. And I think by this time he's probably gone. So that was how I came into the program. And there were meetings in Snohomish, and I'd wait until it was dark. And so people wouldn't see me going in the side door of the church in Snohomish, because they knew that there was an AA meeting there, and they knew me. They didn't know me from a hot rock, but that's where the ego was. But I kept going to meetings, and I had one guy, and I can picture him in my mind's eye, and I can't not tell you his name, walked up to me and at the end of a meeting, and this is probably after, I don't know, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months. And he said, "Do you have a sponsor?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, you need to get one, and you need to get one right fucking now." And he turned around and walked away. So that's, and about that time, I was going to meetings in Bellevue, and I had met Gary and Terry, and we're going to meetings with them down here in Seattle. In fact, the first meeting I went to in Fremont at the old hall, he said, "Come on, we're going to Fremont to go to a meeting, go to a luncheon meeting." I asked Gary to be my sponsor, and so this was one of the first things we did. And so I put on a shirt and tie and went to the Fremont meeting. And it was very obvious that I was out of character. We went lunch. Sandwiches were passed around in a wicker basket, and one side of the bread was white, the other side was dark, and there was bologna in the middle with mustard and mayonnaise on it, and that was it. And they were all cut in half, so you could have. That was lunch at the big hall, and so the fact that, and I still had the dealership then for a short period of time. And then when it all went away and the family went away, or my wife went away, and then the dealership went away. And like I say, the city bought it at a fair price for me and a fair price for themselves. And it took care, honest to God, I had $200 left in my pocket. I moved down to Bellevue. I didn't have a job. We sold the house. At that time, I sold it for what I owed on it, and just got out of there. Kids went with Judy, and went to Bellevue and stayed at Mike Schmidt, who's gone now. He was in the program. I slept on his couch for 2 weeks, and found a guy that would rent me an apartment. And I went to work selling cars on the used car lot in Renton. And then when I moved into the apartment that I lived in, it was with the mattress on the floor, the sleeping bag on top of it, and that was it. I didn't have enough money to buy curtains. I didn't have enough money to buy a shower curtain. It was nothing. But I went to work every day, and I worked different spots as the years progressed, and I didn't have to drink. And my friend to this day, my sponsor, Gary, who is incredibly ill now. The day I quit drinking was 12/12/72. And the years went by. Of course, got a divorce, got remarried, and got divorced again. And I haven't remarried nor, anyway, that's a whole different deal. When September 7th, 1963, I've been sober since December 7th, 2003. I had split up with my second wife, and I was headed to, and had picked up the dog and was going to take it and give it a bath and take it back home. I had an apartment in West Seattle, and I got a call and my son had grown up, married, had a daughter, and I got a call from his wife, Todd. We're headed to the hospital. Greg passed out, they lived on Vashon Island. He had gone running that morning, was training for the Chicago Marathon, and had been for months. It wasn't something brand new. And Greg passed out at the Fauntleroy Ferry Dock, and we're headed to the hospital. I'll meet you there. And so when I went to the hospital right then, and I was the first one, Allison didn't get there until after I did. And when I was walking into the ER, the guys were loading up the van. And I said, "You guys bring in the young man from Vashon, from Fauntleroy?" "Yep." "How's he doing?" "Well, they're working on him." I knew it was over. I just knew. And it was. They brought him back a couple of times to a point where they could bring him back a couple of times. And I sat with him, I don't know how long, but it was long enough to feel his body change, because I held his hand and his body turned cold. And I called his mom. She lived over across the water at the time. Let her know. And when I came home that night, I must have had, I don't know, 10, 12 phone calls from people in AA. I don't know how the fuck they knew. I don't. And of course, Gary. And it changed, obviously changes your life forever. But because of you, and because of who you are, and because of what you offer, I didn't have to drink. I didn't even think about it until my second wife, the wife I was divorcing, called 3 days after, and there's all this going on. And she said, Todd, are you thinking about drinking? Your AA friends are calling me. And that was the first time I thought about it. And that was a gift that you gave and continue to give every time a new person comes in. You don't have to fucking take another drink. And to my way of thinking, you go to meetings until they make sense and don't drink in between. And then you keep going to fucking meetings. And anything else is intellectualization of the whole program. You don't do that. You just don't fucking drink, period. And it's easy to say that in retrospect, but I didn't think about it. It never entered my mind. Yes, there's a lot of time that had gone by, and I went through a lot of financial shit, and I've never, ever come back to where I was, nor do I care. I go to, I've been to Paris a couple of times, and I go to meetings there at the American Church. And and this is just a side note, and you go out for coffee afterwards, and you knew that there's three of us, three guys. You knew one of them was from Texas because of the way he talked. But I couldn't figure out where the other one was from. Kind of but good English. And so at the end, I said, no, the first guy was from New York. Regardless, it's still and the second guy, I said, "Are you from Austin, Texas?" Because I think I'm so cute at figuring out accents. He said, "No, I'm from Romania." So I was only half a planet off trying to figure out where he was from. Shows you how smart I am. But in summing up, my life is beyond anything I could ever describe. My daughter had 3 boys. Fred, the middle boy, is taller than I am. He's 16. His hands are as big as mine. His feet are size 15. And I don't know how much more it's going to be a lot. 3 boys that are big. The little girl that was with my son that he was holding, that was 10 months when he died, is now 22 and in her last year at Occidental University, or college, not university, because her mom put Greg's Social Security checks in an education account. So, and the kid got good grades, so she could go anywhere she wanted here. Again, I need to repeat that and I got it from the tough guys. One last story. I was talking to my sponsor on the phone after about 3 years sobriety, maybe 3. And he said, Collins, you're not the same as you were 6 months ago. You ought to take a look at that. And he hung up. And about 20 minutes later, Don M., who's gone now, Don Mazzoni calls and he said, "Okay, asshole, I've got you set up for this week or this week at Sundown Ranch. Which one do you want?" And I started to hesitate. He says, "God damn it, asshole. This is what you've got. The only decision you have to make is the week that you're going." And so I picked the furthest one out. And when going over there, I thought, well, I'll take this yellow notepad and a pen and make copious notes to myself. They've got to have a swimming pool. But this is after 3 or 4 years of sobriety. And you walk in, and if you've been there, you sit down, and it's like the first sergeant. Okay, it's this. Here, now get out of here. And this is where you go to sleep. And this is, and it's very regimented. And I did it. And I did it because you told me to do it. And I'm alive today because of you all. I'd be deader than a fucking doornail in a heartbeat. But, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.